I am Vivian Berkovich. There is an I on the end of my name, and it's pronounced as if it's an H, so now that we've cleared that up. I'm going to briefly introduce myself, and then briefly introduce each of our speakers, guests, panelists, and then we're going to jump right into a discussion, okay? It's extraordinary that you are all here and alert, and we'll do our best to keep you awake, and I hope and generate some lively discussion after some speaking. Very briefly, I'm from Toronto, Canada. Originally, I practiced law there for 25 years. I was asked by Prime Minister Stephen Harper in late 2013 if I would accept the incredible honor of being the Canadian ambassador to Israel. No, I had not lobbied for the position. It was nowhere even on my radar. Yes, I did have political connections, and I jumped at the opportunity. I came here. I was in office serving Canada for 2.5 years as a political appointee. When Justin Trudeau was elected, I was, you don't stay in a job on your political. I was redundant. I think that's what they said. In any event, I've remained in Israel since. So 9 years ago, when Shalom College was founded, I learned that I had the appointment. I've been here now for 9 years, since January 1st, 2014. One set of office, I decided to stay with one of my daughters, who's in her 20s, and we both officially immigrated, made Aliyah, and started to vote in all these fun elections, which is fabulous. And since that time, I did promise myself I wouldn't go back to law, and I've been working as an independent consultant in various industries, done a lot of political writing, and 6 months ago launched my own, well, not my own, it is my own though, a media platform. It's digital, it's print, we're just starting into the audio. Look it up, follow us, subscribe, love it. It's called State of Tel Aviv, all one word. So if you put in stateoftelaviv.com, then you get to it. That's my life in a nutshell. What I'd like to do now, and I'm sorry gentlemen, but this I have to read, because I did not memorize your bios, although I did on the way in from Tel Aviv. I live in Tel Aviv and I was driving in the worst traffic, and on the way in, I did have my daughter read them to me slowly, twice. Well, just because, then it goes in and gets your head in the right space. So from my left, your furthest right, Imam Dr. Talib Shareef, pronounced correctly?
Yes.
Is president and Imam of a historic Nations Mosque, Masjid Muhammad, in Washington, D.C. Imam Shareef is a retired U.S. Air Force member with 30-plus years of service. He has a doctorate degree from Global Oved Dai Seminary and University, an MBA from American Intercontinental University, a diploma from the Imam Muhammad Ibn Saud Islamic University, and the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center in Arabic and Middle East Studies. An underachiever. He is a student of the late Imam W.D. Muhammad, Muslim American spokesman for human salvation. I'm feeling, small.
Me too.
To my immediate left, Rabbi Dr. Yakov Meir Nagen or Nagen?
Nagen.
Nagen. Okay. An Israeli rabbi and author, Nagen is a leader in interfaith peace initiatives between Judaism and Islam, and in encounters between Judaism and Eastern religions. He is the director of the Blickle, or is it Pickle?
Blickle.
Oh, okay. Almost. The Blickle Institute for Interfaith Dialogue and the Beit Midrash for Judaism and Humanity. Nagen also teaches at Yeshivat Otniel and has written extensively about Jewish philosophy and Talmud. And in the middle of the sandwich, Father, Dr. Piotr Zelazko, is vicar for the St. James Vicariate in Jerusalem, born in Lubsko, Poland, not Pola, and he studied at the Pontifical Biblical Institute in Rome, at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and the Studium Biblicum Franciscanum in Jerusalem. He has held numerous positions in the Catholic Church. So this is an extraordinary panel. And what I'd like to do, I don't really think I need a mic, do you? No, I know. It's a small room for me. I project. What I'd like to do, just to start the discussion, and I'm dying to know about each one of you, very briefly, what brought you to this path? I mean, most imams, most priests, most rabbis do not engage directly in interfaith dialogue and efforts, because we all have busy days, right? But you three did. And so I'm going to start with you, Imam. Can you share with us what caused you to do this? What brought you to this path?
Yes. Thank you for that question.
Should I give you the mic?
Is the mic on?
Yes.
Testing, 1, 2. Or do I need
We'll
this?
give you this one maybe.
Testing, there we go, testing. Is it that or which one? I can't tell which one it is now. Maybe both. She mentioned that I was in the military for 30 years. And obviously, you get to see the world. And, let me see. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Maybe I got it up too high. Testing, 1, 2. Is that better? Testing, 1, 2. Maybe this one needs to be turned on. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Okay. I went in the military with a group. I started out with a group that had really began by experiencing racism. And this was in North Carolina. And some of you may have heard about North Carolina. Actually, what happened, if you ever saw the movie Lincoln, in the movie Lincoln, he says, if we can take Wilmington, we can win the Civil War. We can win this war. And what happened, the colored troops helped them win that city of Wilmington in North Carolina and the port. And then those colored troops, after the war, of course, they had funds. They settled in Wilmington. And Wilmington became very affluent. They began to rise up in positions. And eventually, at that time, the colored troops got positions, the whites moved out. Colored troops moved up, whites would move out. And they never expected the city to do so well, to flourish and be so prosperous. So they had a meeting in Raleigh in 1898, and they decided they didn't want to have that. So they left the meeting in Raleigh, the KKK and others, and came into Wilmington and took over the city in a very violent way. And so obviously we share some experiences there in terms of stuff in our background, disparaging. And I grew up in that city. That's where I grew up at, so remnants of that was there. So we joined the movement that sought to eradicate that, making you feel inferior, etc. And then later in that group, an individual picked up the American flag. This was the first imam in America's history to pick up the American flag. Even at that time, not to mention, I'll say African Americans definitely were rejecting it because of the treatment. We know the story of Muhammad Ali and the war. And white Americans at that time were burning the flag. And this Muslim, African American, looking at the history of Prophet Muhammad, the peace and peace upon him, and studying the society of Medina, which is reflective of the faith in that city. He picked the flag up and he said, if you all won't pick it up, I will. He said, if we claim citizenship, we have an obligation to support society where we claim citizenship. So we began to embrace. So I began to really pay attention to what he was saying and what he was doing. And then he did something that was, again, a first in America. He was the first imam, this happened in Washington, D.C., where I'm leading now. The first imam to speak at the Washington Hebrew congregation. And that was in the mid-70s. And he began to push, and Muslims at that time, the major Muslim organizations in America None of them really wanted to have relationships, to have close relationships with Christians and Jews at that time. I give you an example, one of the reasons why, and I want to come into this and then I'll be finished. I was in Abu Dhabi for a big interfaith event right before COVID. And the Grand Mufti from Al-Azhar, it was his turn to speak. Now, at this particular interfaith group meeting in Abu Dhabi, this is the first time they had the largest presence and the speaking presence of rabbis and also priests. And he said, when he got to speak, he said, we have issued over 5,000 fatwas, rulings from Al-Azhar. And they've been around a long time. And that's a prominent institution, many of you know. He said 90% of those fatwas prohibit or discourage relationships with Christians and Jews. Now, I'm quoting him. I'm quoting what he said. This was a couple of years ago. And so now you can understand many coming from the ones who migrated to America, coming from the Muslim worlds, the kind of thinking, the scholarly opinions that they've been given, the rulings they've been given, why a lot of them were hesitant in that. But Imam Muhammad, he's looking at the Quran, he's looking at the life of the prophet, the first city, and he begins to engage. And then we begin to see things change. He begins to engage and things begin to change. And he even put I'm going to end with this. He put a clear understanding and meaning to what we say people of the book. That's something that's common. We all heard that before. Now, that's a translation. People of the book is a translation. Now, that translation didn't come from Americans. That came from those outside of America. And the actual meaning of that is family, not people. Now, those who speak the language, the minute you speak the language, if I say, ku anfusikum wa ahlikum naran, you automatically translating that, those who are Arabic speaking, save yourself and your family. And the more you go through the Quran and begin to translate it, what the Quran is actually saying, in the Quran, that's the first way to understand it, is the Quran. It's called Quran tafsir, Quran bil Quran. The Quran explains itself. The meaning is family. And but see, I can understand why those outside said people, because that can justify you being away. But if I say family, I bring you close. But God was saying, he was bringing us close. We're a family of those who receive books from heaven. And of course, we know we're all children of Adam. And we know that there's a line of prophethood and brotherhood. So and the more we engage, and then he said, "O people, O you family of the book." And this is the ending. He said, communicate, talk to each other. Start with things that are common. Ta'alu ila kalimatin sawa. Use communication. Communicate. Start from where we were common and equal, and then we can have a basis for moving forward. And that's what led me to this.
Thank you so much. And a lot rolling around in my head, but we'll get to that later because we have a nice lot of time to talk. But the way you express it was so interesting because I asked an open-ended question, and I have to admit I expected a different kind of response. And the way you laid it out was, what else? What other way is there? There is no other option. Here's what the holy books say. Here's what we're supposed to do. And things just, there is no other direction. I'm going to change the order just, to keep it lively. Rabbi, you next.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
Well, to tell you the honest truth, I just simply love people, but then afterwards I have to make it into an ideology and a theology to make an excuse for that. So, and as I mentioned before, for those who read Hebrew, I have a pamphlet here, which the Avat Olam, Loving the World, Stories of Encounters of Judaism and Humanity. But the part of the turning into the realities of life, part of it was the Yeshiva in Otniel that I've taught for 25 years. A major figure, someone well known to the Israelis, was Rabbi Menachem Fruman. And one of his great insights was, if religion is part of the problem in the conflicts at the Middle East, religion will also have to be part of the solution. That our religious and ethnic identities could set us against each other, but if we delve deeper into them, we could find that our deepest identities could truly connect us. And somehow things led to another, and this is the path that I've been taking. And very much, first of all, if I'm sitting next to my Catholic father, one source of inspiration is the tremendous changes in the Catholic Church approach towards Judaism and other religions in general, in Nostra Aetate, which really began a process for many years. And I feel that gives a model about how we could, with new eyes, look at our traditions or new ears, listen to the words of God. And that led me to establishing one of my institutions, the Beit Midrash for Judaism and Humanity, which in many ways tries to find those new eyes to read our sources and to build up the world the way I believe things should be. And I feel that my focus is really primarily Islam, and I truly believe that in Islam you have a lot less work to do. I've read the Quran and the Hadith many times, and as you mentioned, I'll use the original Arabic, Ahlu Kitab, and everyone knows, even some basic Arabic knows that the Imam is correct. Ahlal is used for family, so it's really the family of the book. And somehow seeing how really the pluralism of the different surot are so, it's the tragedy is how they have been misinterpreted through the ages. But one thing I really feel is that things are really on the move. If you mentioned the Mufti of Al-Azhar, I've been to Al-Azhar, and just last week I was with the Mufti in Indonesia, and he spoke very different tones than the way you quoted him. So I feel that things are on the move, on the change in this path, and realizing the existential reality we don't have the privilege of not interfaith. Because if we truly believe, if religion is part of the problem, it will have to be part of the solution. We don't have the luxury to ignore the necessity to find our connections, person to persons to one another, by linking to our deepest identities. So we have, in America, maybe you can live without interfaith, but here I believe we need interfaith. We need to find our ways to connect to our Christian, Muslim brothers and sisters who are either Palestinians, Israeli Arabs, or members of the Middle East.
Thank you. And I would just add to that in Israel, we also need to find ways to connect Jews to Jews. Just keep it real.
So, if I can respond to that point, often people say, what are you always working about relations to the non-Jewish minorities in Israel? We're always arguing among each other. So one of my responses is I feel a lot of the internal tensions in Israeli society, in Jewish society, is how do we relate to the broader world? Issues whether it's between the right wing and the left wing, the religious and the secular, part of the question, what is the place of the Jewish people in the broader story of humanity? This is part of the heart of the tensions, and I feel by resolving these tensions is a way to help resolve part of the internal Jewish tensions in Israeli society. So
okay, well, stay tuned. Father, love to hear your path. You have, I want to point out, just in case you didn't notice, the shortest biography. So you get the Humility Award for the evening. Not that you're not, but I know that you've done some very interesting work. So if you could please fill us in on your background a little more thoroughly than your bio suggests.
Well, for me, this path was kind of natural because I grew up in a house where everything was so obvious. I mean, my grandfather was caught by the Germans during the Second World War and sent to Austria as a worker there. And he met my grandmother, who was from Ukraine, and her last name was Levitsky. And they came back to Poland, and my mother was born in where today is Belarusia. So she spoke Russian. She even became Russian language teacher. So in my house there was Russian language and German language. I did my high school in Germany. And it was obvious that, like, no matter who you are, you need to connect with the people because your identity is something that does not define you completely. You don't judge people by their belonging to a certain group. This is called intolerance. You judge people by their deeds and words, not by their identity. So when I went to this high school in Germany, my friends were Germans, teenager friends, the first friends, like we knew that our grandfathers were on the opposite sides during the war, maybe shooting to each other. Okay? And we dated German girls, and as teenagers, for us, the past was not a problem. We always looked at the history as something we need to learn from the errors, but here is our time. We make the future. We are the future. Okay? So growing up in this kind of environment, when I decided to be a priest, and I finished my first degree in philosophy, I went deeper into it, like, okay, there's so many various ideas in the world, and how great it is to meet people and to learn from them, and like give respect to everyone because everyone has a story, and you can learn something from everyone, absolutely everyone. And then I started to study theology, my second degree, and here I fell down into the theology of the Catholic Church, which, we have very complicated history as Catholic Church. 2,000 years of very complicated relations with Jews, and also a little bit less, but also with Muslims. But I think the Catholic Church did the homework. And I was born and raised in the church that doesn't know those problems. I mean, they still are as a part of the past, but today's theology says, these are your brothers. We believe in the same God, God of mercy. Okay? Here is your older sister, Judaism. Without Judaism, there is no Christianity. Here's your younger sister. And, like this theology, for me it was obvious that as a priest I will have to do something in this direction. So when I arrived to Israel 15 years ago, I didn't know the language. I started to do my third degree, PhD in the Bible, of course, and there was a rare opportunity to be a priest in Beersheba, which for many people here sounds like, what? Beersheba is like, turn left at the end of the world. People have this wrong idea of Beersheba being a city of camels. But this kind of a spot far away from everywhere doesn't mean that there's not the same problems. And there was a moment when I was already a priest in Beersheba, there was a moment when the tension started to grow in the Negev. And some women from a synagogue in Omer and from a Christian church there, and they started to organize something. They said, let's do something. There is a lot of tension, let's do a meeting. Oh, Hanukkah is a nice occasion. And during this meeting, there was a funny thing because this old American rabbi with this old sheikh, they started to like hug each other and say like, oh, we are doing the inter-religious dialogue for 40 years. And in this very moment, I just looked to my left and my eyes met the eyes of the rabbi who's my age. And we started to smile like, okay, now it's our time maybe. And you know what? This was a beautiful friendship with a rabbi. I thought something like this happens in the movies. He invited me many times to celebrate feasts in his house. I met his wife and beautiful family. And he came to me for Christmas Mass. And, anytime I wanted to talk to him, there was like, let's go for a beer. Let's watch a game together. Why? I think we both needed somebody who does, I don't want to say the same job, but has a similar calling, but in a different world. Like, help me to see myself from your perspective. When he moved to Melbourne, Australia, I miss him until today, and the rabbi in the synagogue became a woman, which is fine, but the dynamics was different. I couldn't call her in the evening like say, you want to grab a beer? It's a little bit different dynamics, But from those friendships, I mean, like human friendships, we knew that whatever we do in inter-religious dialogue will be fine because we really like each other. And so this organization, Interfaith Initiative of the Negev, was started. Last week we received the prize of the University of Ben Gurion in the Negev. And in the name of the organization, I was one of those receiving the prize. Great honor. And Rabbi Shareef from Yerucham said at the very beginning, he said, there's two possibilities for this organization. Either we will explode and gain like many people, or we will die out in a natural way. None of this happened. We are still a group of people, like Muslims, Jews, and Christians that meet frequently. There's many nice projects. We go to high schools in Israel, Muslim schools, Jewish schools. For those young people, this as an image says more than many words. Seeing a priest hugging a rabbi says more than thousands of words. They love those images. And they really, sometimes we feel like we are on the same side in front of young people who say religions are not necessary. All your religions cause the problems. So as you said, we started to talk about how the religions can have solutions for the conflicts. And that's my beautiful adventure with many Jewish and Muslim friends. We visited many mosques. Seeing a sheikh in the Negev that just finished to build a mosque, like being responsible for it, and talking to him like we do the renovations of the church, and talking about the same problems or what to do so that the young people will not escape from synagogue or the church. These are the same problems of religious leaders, but the deeper message was how can we influence our own communities in order to show if your leaders can do it, you can do it too.
So I'd like to pick up on that because there's so much positive energy, right, up here. And it's fascinating. You talk about unifying forces, you talk about the positive power of religion, the message of religion. And I don't want to politicize this discussion in any way. But it's very important because we live in a liberal democracy in Israel. You come from a liberal democracy in America. All our democracies are flawed, we understand that. How do you see yourselves influencing the broader social debate? You just spoke about young people leaving or disaffected with religion. And most democracies work hard to keep religion and state separate, right? I mean, so on the one hand, we're saying we can't live without this and we need more of it, if it's fair for me to interpret that. And on the other, we live in societies that are very conflicted about religion and the power of religion. So this time I'm going to ask you to go first.
Impacting on society and...
Well, impacting on society in terms, how do you bring your positive, interfaith, powerful message, all the things that you're talking about here, and make it resonate in the broader society? How do you reach people who are not of deep faith? And is that important? Yeah. Or is that even something that you should be thinking about?
Well, one thing I'm often challenged, people say, Rav Yakov, the fact that you're friendly with some Imam somewhere, is this going to bring peace? And I say, you don't understand. If I have a deep connection with a person of a different faith, a Palestinian or an Israeli Arab, if we have a connection, this already is peace. This isn't what comes out of it. This is happening right now between us. This is peace. I hope and pray to multiply this by millions. But if we only think about the ultimate peace or whatnot, people will be discouraged and give up hope. And then I give them homework. My students, and I've been blessed for 25 years, together with Yeshayahu, about 2,000 students have come through at Niel. The homework I give them is, okay, now you too, make peace. Find a person who's very different than you. It could be a different religion, it could be different politics or whatnot. And be connected, make peace, and be part of this multiplying that we hope to get to millions. So I think, as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. So I think it has to be about being together. I was very gratified several years ago. There was an event called the Jerusalem Hug, that Israelis and Palestinians coming together to give a big hug to the walls of the old city of Jerusalem, and to say we want Jerusalem to unite us and not divide us. And I was gratified that Google, in year of review, chose a picture from the hug to exemplify you're in searching to make sense. So somehow it's person to person, it's a long path, but we have no choice. We need a person to person, but also realizing every step is a fulfillment in itself. And maybe something I should have done, which Yeshaya should have given me musar for not doing it. Generally, every lecture I begin by saying the Hebrew date, and then the verse saying, the biblical verse, I'll say it in Hebrew translation. For 20 years I started every lecture this way. Hayom, Chaf Bet Cheshvan, Taf Shin Pei Gimel, Tieshnat Panim Gluyot. Ze Hayom, Asa Adonai Nagila V'nismecha Bo. I state today's date in Hebrew, because today's date is unique. It never was, it never will be again. And I say, this is the day, the verse in the Bible, that God has made. Let us take joy in it. Saying that life is not about our long-term plans, what's going to be. Life is happening right now. Peace is happening right now.
Beautiful. I wish you'd done that at the beginning. It's almost like, you're this human shofar, right? And am I correct if I extract from that, or what I take away from that is, what's important about the message and the connection isn't so much that I'm religious, I, the rabbi, I, the imam, I, the father. What's important is that we're just trying to actually connect in a human way with another. So if your motivation begins with religion, that's okay. Someone else's maybe, okay.
Can I add one short thing, or is it?
Well, you can in a minute. I want to go to the imam,
okay.
because what I want to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
sort of picking, going along with this theme, do you think that religion should be brought into public life more than it is? I mean, I know America's got this quirky, in my view, relationship. It sort of says, just like Canada, there's separation of religion and state, but not so much. And, every American leader I ever see, they begin and end their speeches with "God bless America." So, I mean, that's, that's religious. Do you think that religious values, religious messages should be integrated more in public life in order to promote the values we're talking about tonight?
Yeah, the quick answer is yes. Let me. I want to go back 1 minute, and then I'm going to add a little more to that. Our Father mentioned that if there was no Judaism, there'd be no Christianity. And he turned to me, but he didn't mention if there was no Christianity, there'd be no Islam. But and some Muslims would have an issue with what I'm getting ready to say, but Jews, Christians, and Muslims, we're in one, not two, not three, but one scriptural reading. We're together. And the truth is, if there was no one, there'd be no two. If there was no two, there'd be no three. We have to embrace those that came before. The significant figures in both of these faiths, I have to embrace them. And they're a part, and they're in the scripture. So that's a basis. But this goes back to your question, because it had to start somewhere. And everything really starts from the invisible, which takes us to the religion. And then it becomes visible. And of course we know in all of our scriptures, it says that Everything starts with B. And I just started reading his book. And the first word is B on his book. And I'm enjoying what I'm reading so far. And there's a lot of energy in B, and that's doing it. There's a lot of energy in that. But God said B. And then, of course, we know this creation comes into motion. And then the Hebrew words give us a better description because it mentions the word for chaos and disturbed, and unrest. This is the word. And God didn't want it to stay like that. So this is the picture that we're given. Now, before we get here, and God said to that, come together, willingly or unwillingly. And that matter that was there way before us, it responded, we come willingly. And then, of course, the way the picture goes, now order, unity begins to come into that matter. They're given their space. They're given their assignments. They're given their attention and their place in the beautiful picture. And then we look at that, and it's only after that happens do we find there's peace in the heavens. So now the Creator is giving us a picture. This is a universal logic of what has to be done for us to achieve the same thing. If that matter that we came out of, first of all, it should tell us that we came out of that because that was here before us. And all our books talk about 6 days. First day, what was treated, second day, and then the sixth day. And then because Adam comes. But he comes out of what was there before. And then, so if he came out of that, if that we came out of willingly obeyed the Creator of all, the invisible, the unseen, that should tell us that our own nature, that this nature that doesn't want us to go against the will of the Creator. And that tells us that's an important message for us. That if we don't bring that into the creation about coming together, we're going against the nature that God created us upon. So it's an imperative. I like Sharaka because it means partners. It means coming together, right. Connecting. The scripture shows us.
How do you integrate that in public life? How do you make what you're talking about, which is very theologically based?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So how do you make that resonate, or how do you get that to resonate in the broader society that may not be of faith? That's what I'm at. Like, do you think that your views and your approach, your interpretations, have a place in modern liberal society? A greater place than we see now, a lesser place? Do we need more of it? Do we need less of it? That's the kind of. Can you respond very briefly to that?
Yeah, we need more of it because what we have to do is that's a picture. The theological way. I responded because of what happened to me. He mentioned circumstances, Germany. I mentioned some circumstances. And then we begin to do things to begin to bring people together. The Imam that I'm a student of, he was a model. He began to bring, in fact, we have one of the greatest relationships among Christians with the Catholic community. You know, we've been having a 25 years strong with not just the leaders of media now, the communities are coming together. But the community, the Muslim community was very skeptical. They didn't understand that being able to come together. I mean, really having a great relationship, children coming together, doing things together, celebrating birthdays together. For the past 25 years, this is something that started, and it started at the Vatican. And there's millions all across America. We got all across in every state now. The families, not the leaders, are meeting. But that was the basis for it to see, because everybody, we're invisible and invisible. But the visible can only manifest itself through the visible. The invisible can only manifest through the visible. So in order for us to reach the purpose, our intended created purpose, we have to be able to come together to bring out the actions that's been put into us by the Creator. And that's how we begin to demonstrate that in society, by coming together, demonstrating and showing it, breaking the barriers, bringing walls down, and connecting. One of the pieces was bridges. You got to have two sides to build a bridge. So that means you got to have some coming together. And he mentioned the coming together. That's how you begin to break the bridges. And life starts with that mother, because she connects with that baby. And that tells us all human life, in order for it to be healthy, regardless of your race, nationality, ethnicity, if there's no coming together, that's not going to be a healthy society. That's not going to be a healthy community. That's not going to be a healthy nation. That's not going to be a healthy world.
Amen. You come from a different part of the world, which, and I'm assuming that you spent some of your life living in communist Poland.
Mm-hmm.
And you came out with this very strong faith. And now we have a different Poland. So I think that, and I expect that you'll be bringing a different perspective to this particular discussion. Do you think that there should be a place for faith in secular societies, in public life? And if so, why?
Well, I think, like European experience is much different than American. You can never start, any politician cannot start a speech with God bless France or God bless Germany. He's finished now. There's no space in the public political life for using those words. You should be politically correct. You should be absolutely free of any religious influences. Meanwhile, in Israel, it's also a different perspective because Israel is a very religious country. Everybody here needs to underline, I'm this or I'm that, and this religious tension here. But I think, especially showing to the society that religion might bring solutions. This is what is one of our goals, because secularization is a fact everywhere, also in Israel. Like most of you are probably not religious. And maybe you think like religions bring problems. And those of religious leaders who understand the difference between religion and faith and say like if you dig deeper inside your own religion, you will find this fire, which you can call grace, God himself, that enables you to love the others, to respect everybody, and not to try to convince the others. I think this is the key because, and obviously, both of you probably, I assume, are not very well received even by your colleagues. Because, there's still religious leaders who think this is not the model. Let me tell you about my problems with my religious colleagues, not only Catholics, but also Christians who are not Catholics. Sometimes they say, you are not Christian. You're not preaching Jesus enough. I was preaching in synagogues, for Friday evening. And I would never say you need to believe in Jesus, otherwise you're wrong. No? I would rather say, search and you will find, because if there is a God, he wants us to be on the way to him. He is waiting. Common message for all religions. Which way should young people search for God? And I think there is a universal way for many religions. Open your scriptures. Go inside your heart. If there is a God, the conscience is his voice inside you. Okay? Mm-hmm. So basic spiritual things instead of convincing the others. My friend Rabbi said, we don't meet in order to change our faith. It's not possible. It will not happen. Okay? So why do we meet? To learn from each other. Okay? And I think this is what we should show to the public opinion, that religions are not stupid, one-way directed, hating others, because this is the popular picture, image of religions that many people have in this in our secular societies. So I think this is our duty, yes, to show that you can be Muslim, Christian, or Jew without hating the others, without trying to convince. A big step for me personally was this declaration from Cairo when Pope Francis with a few Muslim leaders, they wrote a letter, which is nothing extraordinary now in these days. Those declarations, letters, whoever reads them. I took my time to read this letter. And there is a sentence that I wouldn't ever expect from Muslim leaders or Christian leaders. The sentence that says, maybe is a crucial word, maybe God wanted us to search for him in a different way. Maybe this is why we have different religions. Boom! I don't think ever Catholic Church or any Christian church spoke this way. I don't think any Muslim leaders spoke this way. We need to give this a chance. Maybe God wanted us to be different. Maybe, who knows? Who are we to say we know what God wants, no? I mean, and this is also for you young people, if you ever meet a religious leader that says, I know what God wants, run.
So
Run.
this is actually, you just handed to me, this was not a setup. I'm not sure how long you guys want to go with the program. I'm assuming you want some time for Q&A with the group, but I want to just throw out one more issue, and thank you for that setup, because what I wanted to ask about was the fact that religion is so often used as an instrument of hatred. And, you know, you're talking, say it again, that sentence. Say it one more time for me.
Maybe God wanted us to be different and to search for Him in different ways.
Okay, and you know, you know what the response might be from many religious leaders of all three faiths represented here. And, you know, it's that kind of paradox of human nature. Right?
I agree with him.
We turn on...
Quran agrees with that
I
statement.
think probably everyone in the room does.
Yeah.
But we may be in an anomalous group. You know, we're drawn to bad news. When you turn on the television, if you do, or if you open a newspaper, whatever that, you know, if anyone does it anymore, but we're drawn to bad news. We seem to feed off it, moths to a flame. And what you three are talking about is sort of, you know, the light side, the good news, the positive message. Why do you think, and you get to go first, Rabbi, why do you think that we see religion used so frequently and effectively to incite hatred and spread hatred? And how are you going to fix that?
Okay. Good question. We just, in light, to fill in the words that the Imam just began with, it's quite explicit in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the 5th surah of the Quran. It says explicitly, if God wanted, He could have given one religion to all. Right. But no, He gave the Torah to the Jewish people, which is light and guidance, and they should follow the rabbis. He gave the Evangel to the Christians, and He gave the book to the Muslims. So I feel we're not radicals. It's as a basic, your question is, the question is how texts that are so explicit have been so ignored and misused. This week is the second 2 years to the passing of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. And I think one of his most important books, which it's been translated to Hebrew, so I recommend also to the Israelis here, and it's very pertinent to internal crises in Israel, called Not in God's Name, where he tries to answer exactly this riddle. How is it that religion, that on the surface, each of the books that we share talk about peace and love and generosity, how have these been used, so misused? And for thousands of years this has been known. The Talmud already says that the Torah, it could be a potion, sama chayim or sama mavet, a potion of life or potion of death. Blake has written about the Bible. We both read Bible day and night. You read black and I read white. So these have all been, it's been noticed for millennium. So Rabbi Jonathan Sackson's books tries to answer this question. What he calls it pathological dualism. Pathological dualism means a mindset, which is not limited only to religions, of dividing the world into two. It could be the light, the good and the evil, us and them, the light and the darkness, those loved by God, those hated by God. And this pathological dualism creates this reality that if you decide we are the light, we are the beloved, we are the chosen, and they are the rejected, the hated, the darkness, the evil, this is a recipe for hatred and ultimately violence. Unfortunately, pathological dualism is not only about religions. Unfortunately, I'm shocked. I was born in America, and the pain that I feel in recent years, looking at internal politics, you could say Republicans and Democrats, some of them have this pathological dualism, and we see this so much happening in the world, which is being fragmented. but identifying this pathological dualism as the source of the problem, this is the answer to what the problem is. And the solution we spoke about a little bit before, could elaborate later, but we could go through other distinguished speakers.
Yes, I love that though, pathological dualism. If I can be crass for a moment, hatred sells. It does. I mean, it does. It attracts attention, and that's a human nature kind of pathological dualism conundrum. Imam.
There's a book out, I can't remember the author, it's called, you can write this down and go Google it, find it, but it's called When Religion Becomes Evil. And he kind of gives that quote about, it's in the Quran about 7 different ways, not just if you want everybody to follow the same way, if you wanted everybody to be the same. He says about 7 different ways, 7 different things in the Quran. He said if he wanted us to be, he could have done that. God said he could have done that. Now, one of the reasons why people use religion is because of the spirituality of human beings. Nothing drives us to make commitments and make certain sacrifices outside than something bigger than ourselves. And that's why they bring in this supreme thing. That's why they use. And God gives us, and this is highlighted in this book too. This is in the Quran, and it's one of the most quoted verses. I'll just say it in English for the sake of time. I created you from a male and a female. Oh, you who have faith, first of all, I created you from a male and a female. Okay, and there's a lot in that when it says male and female, because all of us are a composition of a male and a female at a minimum. There are many males and females in it. There's nobody that's all male, nobody that's all female, so no such thing as a 100% macho. Anyway, but that also speaks to the sensitivity about our nature and compassion. So he said, I created you all from male and a female, and I cause you to be different. And he uses the word lita'arafu, and that's what sometimes is missed. Lita'arafu means that so you will get curious about each other and get to know each other, but first, before you do that, know yourself so you have something to offer to the person when you begin to come together. And then now he identifies the issue. I made you different, I gave you these differences. Now he says, the best of you. And of course, you see people, they translate that, they'll say, not that you may despise each other, to get to know each other, not to despise each other, to give us an indication of what comes once you begin to see yourself and look at yourself, that you begin to see. And God says, now, the most honored of you in his sight with him is the one that does the most good, is closest to him. So he's saying the honor is not in your other identities, the other labels that you want, racial, religious, ethnic, national. No, who is going to do the most good in his eyes? The best before God and man, before man and God. So that's where the issue comes in at. Somebody, and he takes us back, there's an entity, how we want to do it, we can get into about this entity that says, when he wouldn't bow down to Adam, and he said, why? Because I'm better. My religion is better, my race is better, my ethnicity is better, my nationality is better, and this is where the problems come in at. If we can, and that's why he takes us back. Even the start of that, male and the female, takes us back even to Adam. When Adam was created, he didn't have a racial identity, didn't have an ethnic identity, didn't have a religion, didn't have a national identity. His identity, the first identity given to him by the one that created him, that came out of this earth, was human. And we know humans has a nature about being woman, such. Human first. That's, if we focus on that identity, that's to say that identity is strong enough to support these other identities. If we keep that in the equation. And now we can look at the distinctions and begin to learn and benefit and work together, get to know each other, and progress our life.
Thank you. Father.
Why is religion misused? Because religion is power. And the temptation to use this power in a bad way is as old as human beings. And it's like the knife. You can cut bread for your kids and you can kill somebody. So it's us who give the value to this instrument which is called religion or faith. And I think, don't get me wrong now, I wouldn't judge those radical religious leaders who use religion for politics, even for evil purposes. I wouldn't judge them as evil people. I think they believe really that what they are doing is true, is right, and that God wants it. I think the human pride inside is like, I know it because I found it in my Quran, in my New Testament, in my Torah. So I know what God wants from me, and this is this. So I would say to religious leaders, first of all, consult the others. This is your pride, that you think, I know it, I found it. It's the lack of humility. Ask the others, consult the others, and you will see that maybe it's not what God wants from you. All those, religious leaders, I think they really, really, really believe in what they are doing, and they will never call it evil. They will call it salvation for the world. They will call it a great plan for humanity, and they are 100% sure that God wants it from them. So I would say, stop for a moment. How to talk to a radical. There was a book of Umberto Eco, how to talk to a radical person. Stop for a minute. Consult the others. Be open to the view of the others. Don't close yourself in your own interpretation, because this is what brings us to misuse the religion in the name of good purposes. But there is no recipe how to do it. Talk to people, educate, and fight any manipulation that you find.
Okay, I don't know about you folks in the audience, but I could riff all night long with these three. But I want to share my good fortune. So I'm assuming that there are questions in the room, comments, thoughts. You're all awake. Well done. Not on this side, on this side. Is there anyone who'd like to ask a question, make a comment? If not, I can. Yes, please.
Yes, I have one. Thank you. Father, you said that maybe God wants us to be different, and I agree. But in Christianity, don't we have there is a principle of mission, like convince everyone.
An interesting question.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for this question, because I think we should see the difference between, preaching in order to convince people, and sometimes it's for good purposes, you found something, like a treasure, and you want everybody to have it. You found something that changes your life, and you want to share it with the others. Mm-hmm. Another thing is searching for new believers, selling the good news, because in all religions, religion is also the way of living. So the more believers you have, the better life you have, right? Or the bigger your church is, and so far away. So I would say, especially Christians, there's a big difference, for example, between Catholic Church and non-Catholic churches. I had a meeting with a young student, 22 years old, coming from Europe, evangelical Christian, and she said, why don't you spread why don't you distribute the New Testament everywhere? Why don't you preach Jesus? Isn't it your mission here? And I said, no, why? And she said, because all those people, they go to hell if they don't know Jesus, no? And I said, who turned your brain into this? Are you talking about billions of Muslims or Jews or billions of Chinese? Who is your God that would say, okay, you were born in China, you don't know Jesus, so you go to hell probably? Because she said, no, we need to go there and we need to preach. This is a different vision of Christianity. And Catholic Church abandoned this vision. This is why I am very often accused. You are not Christians anymore. You don't want to preach Jesus. You don't want to convince people, no? This mission is feel invited to see what I'm doing. And nobody will ever try to make you Christian. We have few couples who are mixed couples, Jewish Christian couples. Here, I did the marriage for a few couples. And, it's always a big drama and tension for somebody who's Jewish and marrying a Catholic girl. What is this marriage? What will they do with me in the church? So the first meeting is always, listen, I promise you, I will not try to make a Christian from you. You can be part of this ceremony, you can be married to this girl, and you can stay whoever you are. So, trying to feel invited to see what we're doing and what we believe in, but without going out and trying to get new believers. This is how I understand the mission. And I had few cases here that somebody, usually young people, young Jews, came to me and said, like, I want to know more about this Christianity. And sometimes the reason is, you know, like, the rebel against the system. And the system is politics, school, army, the state, and also rabbis, religion, okay? So if you want to rebel against, and parents, if you want to rebel against it, what to do? Become Christian. You know, like you will put the knife to all those institutions, no? Especially to your parents. So when they come, it's good to have some psychological approach, like, why are you here? And the first thing I do is usually, you have questions, I understand, but you're the son of Abraham. Go to this or that synagogue, visit this or that rabbi. I always give the names of the rabbis that I know that they have something to say. And I say, if you don't find the answers, come back to me. And many of my colleagues says, this is stupid. You have, you know, somebody comes to you and you send him away. I am not, because I do believe that he can find exactly the same in the synagogue. And if not, maybe God wants him here, let him come. But you know, like, this is how I understand the mission, no? But again, it's not the mainstream.
Wait, 2015.
2015.
In Nostra Aetate in 1965 by the Catholic Church was mostly going against negativity. Saying Jews are not responsible collectively responsibility for the death of Christ, coming out against anti-Semitism. But it was in 2015 when the Vatican issued a second document, which in my eyes is much more significant, called The Gifts of God Are Irrevocable, based on a verse in the New Testament. And they're saying explicitly, as opposed to the medieval concept of there's no salvation out of the church, saying that, for example, Jews find salvation through their Judaism, and as a result, there isn't a need for a missionary activity because they have their path to salvation. So I think you're mainstream.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a really important issue. Is there someone else with a question? Because I did want to, can you hold that for just a second? I do want to hear you, Imam, on the issue of spreading the word, bringing people into the fold. What is the Muslim approach?
Yes, to share. We have an obligation to share. And that's the approach. Ours is not no compulsion. There's no compulsion. Okay. We find some, like we've seen in some societies, where they try to force Christians to be Muslims, and we've seen those kind of things. No, there's no compulsion. Obviously, you compel, once you say I'm that, then obviously you compel to do what you're supposed to do under that once you become that, those kinds of things. But in that light, God says everybody have a way. He mentions there's the Shirat wa Minhaj, but there's also Subul. There are many paths. And again, he said he is the one that guides to the paths. He's the one that guides to the paths. And I want to just make sure I'm clear about the public religious question. My position is that there should not be an oppression, that there should always be freedom of religious freedom. Not that there should be a subjugation on the terms of public, from the government level, but religious freedom. I had an issue, and many did, when America took God out of the schools. You know, because we got to understand that one of the reasons why religion and us as religious leaders is a big piece is once you begin to take that, this is what really caused us in the state of human evolution to be civil. This is the higher knowledge, the greater good. This is the essence of that for humanity. This is where it comes from. You take this out, y'all seen the movie The Book of Eli, right? They kind of you take that out, then everything goes chaos because you don't have anything to bring out our humanity. They're keeping it in track. So that's the standpoint in which I was saying that I want to make sure I was clear on that piece.
And when you say, just for clarity for the non-Americans, there are a few in here, I think, because I'm not sure, I think that when you say you disagree with the decision to take God out of the classroom, you're referring to the Lord's Prayer, the daily recitation.
Well, no, not that. Just even the silence, even the silence, and let people pray in their own way.
I see. Okay.
Even not that. Obviously, we like the term creator, and again. One of the things we see in the way it was set up as an American. They use a term that really goes back to Islam, because in the first verses revealed to Prophet Muhammad, he didn't reveal the name Allah. It wasn't the proper name.
Right.
And when America set up its constitution, its preamble, it didn't use a proper name. It used the Creator. They say whatever faith, you should be able to come to this society and under your Creator and help progress it and move it forward.
Thank you. Now, Rabbi, if you wouldn't mind, just briefly describe the very Jewish mother approach of Judaism to conversion/proselytizing.
Okay. Well, one reason we're such a small people is because Judaism never had a theology of conversion. Recently, the last book put out by my institution, the Beit Midrash for Judaism and Humanity, I'll give the Hebrew-English translation of it. His name will be one, Healing the Relations Between Judaism and World Religions, which goes from the Bible through the Talmud, through the medieval and modern commentaries, giving all the sources statement of seeing other religions as part of the beauty of the plurality of the divine world. And some fascinating statements, for example, just one quick quote of one of the great Kabbalists of the 20th century, Rav Ashkenazi. He was from Algeria, France, and moved to Israel. His image as humanity as being a bouquet of flowers, that the beauty is each flower has its unique beauty, and putting them together makes the beauty of the bouquet. But he gets into the details. He points out what he feels is the unique messages within Islam, the idea of submission, the ideas of the grace and mercy within Christianity, and Rav Sachs would talk about the idea of partnership with God in Judaism, and seeing how he used a Kabbalistic language, which goes beyond the scope of this lecture, by showing how together the sum is greater than the whole of its parts.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So,
Thank you.
Welcome.
You waited patiently. Thank you.
I was curious, one of the comments you all made at the beginning was about how the world is secularizing, both like in Europe and the United States, but perhaps also even here in Israel. And I was just wondering why you thought that was.
One of the reasons is that religions have very bad image in the world. I mean, people start to think like, I don't need those institutions which will tell me what to do, will take away my freedom, and might manipulate me, because they caused so many problems in the history. So this is the popular way of thinking, and this is what we are as religious leaders are trying to change. To say like, religion can make you a better person. Religion can change you. Your faith can give you something that you wouldn't find without it. Okay? So, yeah, but one of the reasons, there's many other reasons probably for secularization of the world, no? Mm-hmm.
To quote again Rabbi Sachs, another one of his books deals with the question, the great partnership about relationship between science and religion. Science takes things apart to understand how it works. Religion puts things together to understand what it means. But I think part of the challenge is the world is getting more and more sophisticated. Part of it is seeing how to get a greater answers to the great questions of life and meaning. And I feel we need deeper conceptions of divinity, of God, and this is one reason why I have a very Kabbalistic stress, because I feel for Judaism because a lot of our answers, and my first interfaith was in Eastern spirituality, but I feel the search for meaning, the first for getting a more deeper, sophisticated understanding of the one, and why this is transformational in our lives. I think this is part of the challenge of religious leaders to try to show that why and how religion is something which is transformative.
Yeah, I think, I mean, our father said it about religion is powerful. You know, you want to get people to move, you bring God into the equation, bring religion into the equation. You get that's how you get more people to move. And of course, what has happened, opposite the experience was religion, one begin to subjugate others, and that begins to really cause problems. So this is one of the things we see that led to the need to secularize. And even with a society, and I think some of them, we say secular, and we can go with that, but I think, America, it was mentioned earlier that, it's a society that believes in God. It's a society that believes in God. I mean, the president had to take the oath. They had to bring God's name in. I was in the military. I had to take the oath. I had to bring God's name in. They use the scriptures and stuff like that. So I'd really say non-sectarian more so than anything else, but we say secular, just make sure there's a division. But it's a non-sectarian society where there's no religion subjugated to another or over another. And but that's why we get to secular, so that boogeyman, so to speak, won't cause problems for others.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I think we're coming up to the end of our time. So you get to ask the last one.
Okay, thank you. This question is kind of for all of you. Father, you mentioned earlier the political power that religions has, and it seems to us recently that quite often hate does not come from religion, but rather or faith, or rather hate, religion or faith are used as an excuse for hate. Religion is being used in this way. How do you handle this kind of phenomenon in general in your community?
Yeah, one of the things the Quran says, and something was brought out earlier, that certainly you can take any one of our scriptures, and you can take something and it'll cause you to do some things, some very hateful things, and you'll be inspired by that. So God puts in the scripture, and it's in several places, and I'm pretty sure it may be different in my sister scriptures. He says, and take the best thereof. Because he knows some people are going to be, so he take the best of. And then so he wants us to really look at things in a state of what is nature and what is natural for human life, for its progression. Look, I mentioned that this came from the creation. This is where we get our best help from to do the right thing. It's obedient. It doesn't. And even in obeying us and having to do something wrong, it's still obeying because it was created to obey us. But this is where our help comes from. If we look at the natural creation, our best help comes from nature itself. The creation itself, it draws us to right conclusions. Just in how we come here. I mentioned earlier when we come from our mothers, that's this embrace that takes place. I mentioned earlier in another setting that Almighty God in his wisdom, the essential need of everything is to feed. He puts the food for the child right where the mother wants to hold a new life, right by the heart. So this is this goodness that begins to come. And then you look at how that child developed. They're not evil. They don't come here lying. They're not looking like they're no murderers. They're no criminals. No one is born that way. Even Pope, I think Benedict had said we had to go back and relook at some things about how we were born, about the world we come into versus how we were born. Because we look at the creation on those first 6 days, everything was good, and then very good on the 6th day. So that's what's in nature. That's what's natural. But yeah, you come into a world in a sense, so they're relooking at the understanding of how that is. And so our best help comes from that. So God said, look at the things that I put in place that's been here. Look, the earth is 4.6 billion years old. We're very young in the age. We go back and we can learn, and we look at creation outside of us in all the other communities, the compassion that they show. And we're the cream. We're the sixth. So we're the cream. We're supposed to be more merciful. We talked about, I think mercy came up earlier, because love is very essential. So hate, Mandela said this. He said, no one is born hating another person. He said, hate is taught. He say, and if hate is taught, then love is easier because love is close to your nature. And I just gave you an example of how love is close to our nature. And that's what happened. The hate comes when you get away from your nature. You go against your own nature.
I would also underline the difference between religion and faith, because sometimes religions are seen as a list of do's and don'ts. Like you behave in a certain way and you don't those things, then it makes you Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. Okay? But if you focus on it and say, like, the way our brothers celebrate Shabbat and we Sunday, the way you eat, the way I eat, if this is something that makes a difference, then it's wrong, because the reason why we are doing this is to find the answer for the very existential question: Why am I here? And why do I need to die? Okay? What is the purpose of my life? And why is it so painful to know that one day it will be finished? Our life will be finished. So we are looking for the answers for those questions. And the question of whether you celebrate this way or that way, whether your God is called with this name or that name, should be secondary. Because otherwise you focus on secondary differences, and this might bring you to hate by saying, I am doing this in a better way. And there is no better way in finding the answer for existential questions. You know, in this way we are all equal, no?
You bet, clean up.
So to reframe your question as how to respond to pathological dualism.
Pretty much.
So I think there are two levels. One is, again, the person-to-person connection before correction, encountering the other, and realizing, I apologize for the gender, making the other into a brother. If you can work with sister, I do it also. But,
Ach and acher.
You're good, yeah.
Yes, yes.
But the other is also with education and teaching. But I think there are two important aspects. It's not enough to say you shouldn't hate because our religion is against hatred. That's not good enough. Because yes, of course, we are all about love and peace. But then, I feel it's really essential to really, part of the education is knowing the others. So when people talk about, quote certain hadiths, for example, verses of the Quran, I say, okay, but if you knew the context, you would realize how misguided that is. So I could quote Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Ma'idah, and sometimes give the context that certain, even negative statements are quoted, half quotes from different sources, but by knowing the full context, it allows me to educate and respond.
I think on that note, we're going to finish. It's upbeat, it's good, nice summations, thank you very much. I want to thank, first of all, Sharaka for inviting me to be up here with these three fine gentlemen and to facilitate this discussion. And all of you for coming, because it's wonderful to have you. It's an important message, and I'm sure that I speak on behalf of everyone here that you're a really kind of dazzling trio. And no, you are, like in terms of the work you do and the commitment and the sincerity, you know, and I wish you Godspeed in spreading your message, lots of light to millions and millions, because we all need more of this. So thank you so much for...
And thank you. We appreciate you. It's been an honor.